think we need to interrogate normality, and I think in other facets of life we accept difference, but I think sometimes when it comes to the body we are less forgiving. So I think that we need to make women feel more normal.
Hello and welcome to Idioms of Normality on Future Framed TV, the collective podcast series of Traces.Dreams, a not-for-profit science communication channel where you can learn about all sorts of weird and wonderful things. And today I'm talking with the author of a book about cosmetic surgery. Her name is Dr. Lindy MacDougall. Welcome.
Thanks, Paul. Good to be here.
And hold us up a copy of your book and show us the title, because it's just been released.
That's in the frame now, I think.
The Perfect Vagina. Fantastic. And this book is about critiquing cosmetic surgery. It's just been released and it's based on your research. But before we jump in, before I start giving away too much, tell us a bit about your perspectives and experiences the perspectives and experiences that brought you to working on a book that questions normality.
Well, I don't think anyone was more surprised than me that I've ended up here. Originally, I was a pharmacist, studied pharmacy at University of Sydney when I left school, and I worked as a pharmacist in Australia and abroad for many years as a hospital pharmacist. But I travelled a lot and lived in lots of different countries, and actually I've lived 6 years in Africa. And in the 4 years we were in Kenya, I already knew about it, but I became interested in the desire of people like the Australian consulate trying to curtail the practice of female genital cutting. And I suppose I always thought that was a good idea. But then I spoke to a lot of women there, and I began to sort of query why we should be telling other people what to do with their bodies. But then when I came to Australia, I went back to pharmacy, but then after a while I decided I wanted to switch. So I did my arts degree and then eventually went on to do my PhD. And what really surprised me when I came to Australia was that women in the West were choosing to have female genital cosmetic surgery, and that was considered just another form of cosmetic surgery, although it is rather hyped up at times. But yeah, so then I thought, well, how can I put these two things together? And what does it say about culture and anthropology, I suppose, study of people?
I want to explore so many dimensions of these rich experiences that you bring to this question. But let me just kick off with the question, Lindy. What is normal?
Well, I never thought that when I started this research onto female genital cosmetic surgery. In my book, I concentrate on female genital cosmetic surgery, but I allude to female genital cutting as well. And because I think you can't discuss one without the other when you're an anthropologist. So basically, I never thought that normality was going to come up as something I dedicated a whole chapter to. But when I started interviewing women, I realised that they felt that their vulvas weren't normal because they weren't like the ones they saw in the media or on doctors' websites, before and after photographs and things. So then they began to feel they weren't normal, and that was a driving force for them to take action.
So the driving force to take action was the feeling that they were not normal.
Yeah, because if you look at pornography or the media, the general media, women's magazines or whatever, or you go onto doctors' websites about saying you're interested in labiaplasty, which is what I mainly cover, which is the trimming of the labia minora, which is the most popular form of genital cosmetic surgery in Australia for women. They show before and after photographs, and there are four what are normal vulvas, but the ones they aspire to and the doctors construct for them is what I term, and it's not a term I coined, a clean slit. So it's like this. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No hair. Well, we all know that pubic grooming has become a big thing. but also no protrusions or anything.
You're mentioning a few different vehicles. There seems to be two different vehicles of messaging. The one in Africa where women find it desirable to have female genital cutting, or that there is an aspirational quality about female genital cutting. Whereas in Australia, it's not necessarily the desire towards something, but the desire to get away from something. And there seems to be a different vehicle of messaging that promotes people or encourages people to normalize their bodies, so to speak.
I think in both situations, obviously we know that normal in one country is not the same as normal in the other, and this is a very good example of demonstrating that. But I think that women in Australia and women in Africa, in my experience, for instance, do what they do to their bodies so that they can feel included within that society, in that culture. So I think Australian women feel if they have protruding labia, then they're not normal or it doesn't look good, whereas obviously the norm that they see in the press and elsewhere, and that they imagine, they might, not a lot of women see a lot of other women's vulvas in reality. They think that then they feel less embarrassed about having sex or about wearing skimpy bikinis or whatever it happens to be, where they feel uncomfortable. And I think in Africa, it is also to fit in. If you think of someone like Janice Body, who talks about circumcision in Sudan, women do it as a form of being part of the society.
It's a right of social inclusion, but where are people being included and where are people being excluded? In what spaces are they?
I can't really speak about female genital cutting. I haven't done research into that. I just experienced that when I lived in Africa. But I think and read about it. But I think in Australia, if you really want an honest answer, I think it's actually in the minds of the women themselves. I mean, I know a lot of women I interviewed, husbands or partners or whatever, said, don't be silly, it's absolutely fine. But they seem to get this fixation in their mind that they're not normal, and therefore they're prepared to act on that.
I've got to try and understand what it's like to walk in the shoes of another person, and sometimes you have to do that by imagining similar experiences in your own life. And I'm trying to imagine myself in an adolescent, in my adolescent self, in my adolescent body, and how, if there was a rash in the wrong place or something, you were just a little bit more self-conscious about yourself, even though you weren't going to show people your rash, you weren't going to show people the tinea on your toes, but you were aware of it, and you were aware, and you felt like no one else had what made you abnormal.
Focus on it. You become a bit focused on it, and I think one of the things I found in my research is, and I think they all is that with the rise of the internet and social media, you can click on something and you can see, like if you click on female genital cosmetic surgery in a search engine, rather than coming up information, scientific information, not there's any science to it, or whatever, it'll come up with a whole list of doctors who will perform it. And then there's a lot of message boards and things where women talk about their genital insecurity. So I spoke to one woman who said, two women in fact, who sort of said that they were actually searching about something else, and then they found out that labiaplasty was a possibility, so they thought, maybe I'll have that. Whereas I don't think this is something that happened in the past. Well, social media, the media, being able to find out about things that we in the past wouldn't have known were possible. But also I want to add one other thing. I think we have to look at consumerism. There's money to be made.
Tell me more about how there's money to be made.
Doctors promote themselves quite strongly, and one of the things I will mention is that a colleague of mine and I went to a conference in Las Vegas run by a group called Cosmetic Gynecology. And that's a big group of people a reasonably sized group of people, I think they're based in New Jersey, who run schools on female genital cosmetic surgery and have conferences. And so basically they're promoting it. And what I got out of this conference were a few things, three things probably. One is that they blatantly said, well, we can make money out of this, women's insecurities. So they're obviously in the business of promoting women's insecurities. The other thing is that they said, actually, I think I'm going to do 4 things, is that there is something called vulval beauty, and they define it, men. So we're looking at the medical gaze, and most of the people were men at this conference. So they're looking at the medical gaze and the male gaze. So male medical gaze saying, and they admit it, they're sort of saying, well, women come in and, they look perfectly normal, but I ask them, well, what do you want to change and everything? So they sort of promote their surgery. The other thing, I felt there was a sense of brotherhood with this group of people because, and they teach people globally. There's some people in Australia who've been trained by them who sort of say, yes, let's get together and we'll make money out of this. It was quite scary, quite eerie. And they're still going. They've been going for years. And doctors are very adamant to promote female genital cosmetic surgery, the ones who perform it, obviously. And they very much say they're doing it for women, to help women become normal or have beautiful vulvas, whatever. So it's like as if they're doing a service. Whereas actually, in my opinion, what they're doing is trying to make money. But maybe I'm cynic.
So it's predominantly men who are the doctors performing and promoting this surgery, but who is going to these doctors? Who are the people who are seeking them out?
Well, in my research, there were women from, the women I interviewed sort of probably from about 18 to, I interviewed one who was 75. But the majority, but a lot of the younger women I interviewed said that their mothers had taken them to the GP, not necessarily the cosmetic surgeon or plastic surgeon, but the GP or gynecologist when they were still teenagers and said, I'm not sure that her genitalia are normal. And the girls I spoke to sort of said, well, they found this a very scary experience. But then 2 of them that I interviewed went on to have surgery. And there's some research coming out of Melbourne, Sonia Grover, that sort of says this anxiety in mothers, there's actually a good study out of Greece as well, is putting ideas, I would say, but that's probably my interpretation, into girls' minds that they're not normal. And that sort of seems to stick with them. And then, therefore, when they get a bit older and they can make their own decision about surgery, they choose to have surgery.
It really highlights to me when you're talking about the conflation of health and beauty within medicine, it really highlights to me that the pursuit of beauty can actually come to the detriment of health.
Oh, very much so. But though the detriment is not what we hear about particularly, although there are in social media, on blogs and websites, there are sort of references to genital surgery that's gone wrong, but it doesn't seem to be a deterrent to women. What they look at is the before and after photos on surgeons' websites and think, that's what I aim for. But certainly some of the women I spoke to had numerous surgeries because they'd been, in their search of beauty, they had very unhealthy experiences where wounds had broken down and they've had to have repetitive surgery, maybe have ribosome injections or whatever to puff out the labia that was cut too short, etc. So there's a lot of the pain and difficulty of surgery is glossed over to a large extent. Okay, a lot of doctors think it's really simple surgery, and most women probably don't have complications. But if you happen to be the one who does have complications, one woman said to me, I thought I would never have sex again because she'd had a botched job. And this is a young girl. But I think health and beauty being conflated is a big part of our cultural makeup. And I guess it's just not a Western thing, because what's beautiful in other cultures is also often takes some discomfort. My aunt, when I was young, always said, Lindy, you've got to be uncomfortable to be beautiful. I think of it all the time. In that day, what I suppose the point about that is, I suppose the point about that is she probably said that to me 50 years ago, but it's still pertinent today.
There's something in there that I want to interrogate, and that is the fixation on normality seems to be driving the insecurities, and in sort of this tripartite relationship, the consumerism likes to insert itself in the middle. Fixate on normality, build on the insecurities, put yourself in the middle, and make money from getting people to fixate on what's normal and addressing their insecurities through this physical change.
Well, I think health and beauty now have become firmly intertwined in medicine. Therefore, doctors have leeway, and the medical profession have leeway to persuade women in this case that they can help them be normal. What doctors promote or the media promotes or what's seen as normal, like with no labia minora protruding from the labia majora, is actually the ideal. It's the ideal that's promulgated in the media. Everything is normal.
How does the normal and the ideal become conflated? How does the normal and what is normal and what is perfect become confused?
What I found out with the women I interviewed, and I interviewed about 40 women, is that some of them wanted to be normal and some of them wanted to be perfect. Some of them were perfectionists, like in every part of their lives, lived in the striving for perfection in their jobs, in their bodies. No. But the ones who wanted to be normal, the final result that they had was actually nothing that you could statistically describe as normal. It was something which was the ideal that you see in the media. Right. So they've decided, I want to look like that.
And which media?
Well, social media, websites, women's sites.
Are we talking about women in bikinis? Are we talking about
magazines? Oh, yeah, and pornography. I just want to say that I don't think pornography is. Most of the women, all but two of the women I interviewed, watch pornography, but I don't see that as a driving force. And I know a lot of people hold it up as, not that I'm pro pornography, but a lot of people hold it up as this is why women are having it because of that. So the normal thing is it's pubic grooming, pornography. There's a lot of women's vulvas are digitally altered, otherwise they can't be seen by the mainstream. And but I think actually, I suppose what I'm trying to call out as a medical anthropologist is that actually the medical profession also have a big interest in this.
I mean, I've seen studies that show that predominantly most of the images used in medical textbooks are male images of the male body, and that the images of the female body are actually a minority of the images. So if you've only got a very small selection of images to begin with, and if a lot of those images look very similar, then it's going to drive particularly because we don't see each other naked a lot. Well, we don't see each other naked in everyday life. We can only imagine what people look like without their clothes. And if our reference point is a very small selection of the population in medical textbooks or in soft porn or in hard porn or Clio magazines, social media, etc., then our reference point is going to be a bit askew. I get that.
I think, of course, the medical references and they're limited, and most women wouldn't look at those particularly. But the diagrams are usually stylized and things so that they can label different parts of the genitalia and stuff. So I don't think they give a real idea to women.
There's a comedy skit that I find quite funny, and it's about pornography and how that everything's got a category in pornography. There's no such thing as the normal body in pornography because everything has a category because everyone has their sort of their own little wish list of pornography. And you said that pornography might not be the biggest, not that you're pro-pornography, but you said that pornography might not be the biggest driver of women seeing their bodies as abnormal or imperfect, but that there are multiple venues for driving images
I think
of
pornography is certainly a contributor. I wouldn't get that because I think it's become pretty mainstream these days. A lot of women, and particularly there's a study. I'm just having a little mental blank. And there's been studies out that say that women consuming more and more pornography, but then the women I interviewed, some of them like to see the pornography of, where women have perfect vulvas and something, whereas other women want to watch homemade pornography or something where you get a lot of variations. And even if pornography does influence women, that's not something they admitted to me.
That's an interesting methodological question there, because it would be very difficult to create a comfortable space for people to talk very openly about quite difficult topics. But what I love about this topic is that it's such a great case example for thinking about normality, such a great example for thinking about how normality drives consumerism, how normality drives insecurities. Tell me about some of your insights into normality.
One of the things I think is that obviously what I found from my history in Africa is that normality, what is normal, is judged by different cultures and at different times. So if normal can be flexible and change, then how can it can't be a static thing. It's what culture decides is normal. And that varies from culture to culture. One of the things that I really found that I really got interested in, it's not really to do with normality, is there's a big drive, I can just say, in the West, because my research mostly came from the West, Australia, the States, and then I looked at things around the Western world, is that there's a sort of, in a Foucauldian sense, there's sort of a imperative that we care for ourselves, that we improve ourselves. Meredith Jones says that we live in a makeover culture. So we can make ourselves over all the time. Yeah. And sometimes that's driven by being normal, and sometimes it might be driven by wanting to be perfect. But perfect and normal end up being conflated, because when people say they want to be normal, what they really want is what's considered perfect. I suppose it did make me question the role of normality in our lives. For instance, in my research, like, no medical people can decide what a normal vulva looks like, what length it is, whether it's 3 centimetres or 12 centimetres or something. So there's obviously no normal. The statistics don't drive the surgery, but I think the ideal becomes normal, and that creates new norms. So basically what women are striving for is not what is statistically normal, or like most of the medical profession, or if you go to websites like to do with women's health or whatever, say the Labia Library, which comes out of Melbourne, which is a website that shows you all sorts of different things and saying this is normal. But that's not what women are satisfied with.
It seems that, and you hinted at this when you said that doctors aren't necessarily good at saying what is normal, but there seems to be a very astute awareness of what is not normal and the need to correct that, and what you called the makeover, what you referenced as the makeover culture, and this incredible investment in the self, this individualism which seems to be tied up with the insecurities and the consumerism.
Yeah, it's a very neoliberal sort of a product of politics. And I think that, I think that's Anne-Marie Mole, I have listening at her this morning, who's a Dutch, I don't know what she does, but sort of basically she said medicine is disciplinary in nature. So economic, political and technological imperatives are at play, not just scientific normality. And I think that's what came out of my research most, is that medicine is not just science, whatever science is. It's not. We have to put medicine into its cultural situation.
Interesting.
I mean, Brazil's a great place where medicine for cosmetic surgery is available in public hospitals and things. Then I guess in some ways it's normalised.
So if you're talking about the conflation of health and beauty within medicine, and if we live within a makeover society, a society that says you have to be healthy, then we're also living in a society that's telling us we have to be beautiful.
You should aspire to that, to be a good woman or a good person. Well, look at fitness, for instance, gyms and things like that, or male bodies. So, people don't like, if I say, I don't go to the gym, or I don't swim every day or whatever, or people admire people working on themselves. It's part of our culture and part of our ethos. And I think female genital cosmetic surgery is an extension of this paradigm. There's a book out by Tanner, Fraser and Ma, that's right, called Good Vanity. It's a really good book. And it talks about how a certain amount of good vanity is admired. In the old days, to be vain was not a good thing. Now, good vanity is looking after yourself. And
just a few generations ago, going to the gym was considered abnormal. And now it's
mandatory,
an imperative. Yeah.
I
want to ask you a question on a personal level, because I'm interested in how you feel about this. I'm reminded of a quote by Roald Dahl, and I'm going to get it wrong, but it comes down to you might have gnarled teeth and you might have an ugly face, but if you have beauty on the inside and you smile, it shines out like sunbeams from your face. And it's a beautiful quote because I remember growing up and all these people that I thought were beautiful in my life. And then when I looked at photos, I'm like, that's not what the person looked like to me because the feeling of that person was so much more beautiful. Yeah. And so how do you feel about all this on a personal level? Like when you think about this, not just with your anthropological hat on, but as a human being who cares about other human beings, how do you feel about it?
I suppose I'm not really interested in model sort of beauty sort of things. I think you see character in people. And so I don't see beauty. And I think this is one of the things that we sort of need to promulgate a bit is, like Roald Dahl says, is I think you have a different, I think you can have a very different way of looking at people than the beauty that you see, which is held up as the ultimate female body or male body or whatever it happens to be. I think we all interpret beauty ourselves, which takes into account, if we know people well, not just how they look. I mean, really, who cares what people look like and what they are? If they're great characters and they're fun or whatever. I was actually at a funeral on Monday. My uncle, he was 96, so we're not talking about it. But there's a picture of 6 of us cousins all together. I come from a big family, and my cousin who's in the UK said, "Oh, doesn't everyone look beautiful? We're all older people who look very average, but it's not about that." But I think that younger, in my research, I think that well, there were some older women who had surgery, definitely, but I think that being younger, you're a bit more vulnerable to fitting in. You probably think, well, this is me. Having said that, we all work on ourselves, in most of us do anyway.
So many different directions we could go in, and I feel that there's a really important drive to question these values and question the cultural codes that we're subscribing to or that can wreak havoc with our insecurities. What questions do you think we should ask about them?
I think we need to interrogate normality, and I think in other facets of life, we accept difference, but I think sometimes when it comes to the body, we are less forgiving. So I think that we need to make women feel more normal as they are, rather than having to strive for something which is perceived as normality or perfection, but is in fact not normal. I mean, to everyone to have exactly the same vulvas is not a normal thing in nature. I mean, there's lots of things in nature that we do which aren't normal in our lives. I mean, well, I suppose it comes back to the question, what is normal? I mean, is it average? No, not in our society.
Yeah.
I don't think so. So I'd like to interrogate what's the purpose of this idea of normality, and how does it serve us, and how does it serve women? I think that normality came up as sort of like the core of a lot of my research, really, when I was trying to find out why women underwent the surgery they did. But I think the difference is that doctors weren't trying to make women normal, they were trying to make them ideal. And I think that's where the problem is, and that needs some.
Lindy MacDougall, thank you so much for sharing your time with us today. And thank you so much for putting this book together and getting it out there onto a bookshelf, because I think it's going to be a really important book for people to read, both within and outside academia. I really hope that.
Yeah, I think it's not just as necessarily an academic book. There's stories in there.
I'm particularly excited about the chapter on normality, but I'm really excited that this story is getting out there, because as a father of 2 children, I don't want my children to grow up with this anxiety, these insecurities brought on by cultural codes outside their control.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's imperative for us as parents to. I think that's, if we come back to our other questions, is I think we can, as parents and on the individual level, make people feel secure about how they feel.
Thank you so much for joining us, and make sure, if you're listening at home or watching at home, make sure to look up a copy of Lindy's book and order it, or go to your bookstore and check it out, or go to the library. And also, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, spread the word. We really enjoy bringing these episodes to you, and we love our wonderful guests who share their time freely with us. Thank you so much.
Okay, bye, Paul.